The early morning sun came in through Willow Elementary School's barely lit windows. There was no one in Miss Allison Clark's empty classroom, and she was quickly going over her lesson plans one last time. She really wanted everything to go well on her first day as a teacher. Allison really liked her job. She had always wanted to teach kids and help them become kind, thoughtful adults. But recently, there have been a lot of stories in the news about fights happening in schools across the country. She thought about students who were scared and huddled under their desks as gunshots rang out down the hall. She shook her head to get rid of the troublesome thoughts. She told herself, "You've been ready for this. Your students will be safe with you." In spite of this, Allison's heart was racing as the first bell rang, calling everyone to their classes. And now she had her first chance to change the lives of these kids. As soon as the door opened, a bunch of happy people came in, talking excitedly about their summers. When Allison met each student, she smiled and said hello. "Hello, class. My name is Miss Clark. I'm excited to teach you this year." One boy who was shy was behind the other boys. He looked straight down at the ground as he walked to an open spot. "Hello, my name is Miss Clark. What is your name?" Her question was soft. He looked up with worry. "Sammy." "Hi, Sammy, it's great to meet you. I think we'll have a great time together." Her reassurance made him feel a little better. As the morning went on, Allison got into a nice flow as she taught simple addition and letter sounds. Her students were smart and excited, and they quickly took in the new information. Allison felt like she was getting into the swing of teaching. This could have been a waste of her time after all. During break, she saw the kids having a good time playing together in the schoolyard. Sammy stayed on the steps by himself and watched the other kids with shyness. She went over and sat down next to him. "Is everything okay, Sammy?" He kicked at a loose rock. "I miss my mommy and daddy." She put a soft hand on his back. "I know they miss you too. You're safe with me though, and it will be so much fun to learn with you." Allison felt warm inside when Sammy gave her a small smile. She knew right then that becoming a teacher was the right choice for her. It would all be worth it if she could make just one shy child feel loved and safe. News stories were getting worse all day though, and her confidence was starting to crack. During lunch, I heard on the radio that 4 students had been hurt in a shooting at a high school outside of the city. Allison tried desperately to hold back her growing worry and believe that good would win and keep her children safe. Allison was both happy and sad when the last bell rang and the rainbow-colored buses with happy kids left. She made it through her first day, and now she had to wait a long time until tomorrow. She locked the door to the classroom and looked out the window at the leaves moving slowly in the wind. There was still darkness out there, but for now, everything was calm here. When the next morning came, Mrs. Clark and her children had more of the same. As the day's lessons went on, arcade math and show and tell kept the students interested. By the middle of the morning, Willow Elementary's bright hallways were filled with happy noise. Allison was showing her kids how to properly form letters when all of a sudden, an all-out alarm went off. The words code red made her heart stop. "Stay put. This isn't a practice." The happy mood disappeared in an instant, and rising fear took its place. Allison acted right away, hidden her own fears deep inside. She told the kids in a firm but kind voice, "Stay calm and do what I say. Right now, you all need to get under your desks." Whispers and cries filled the room as tiny bodies stumbled into place. Sammy was curled up in a ball with his hands over his ears to block out the noise of the alarm. Allison quietly crept up next to him and put an arm around his shaking body to protect him. "Don't say anything, it's fine." She reassured us that everything would be okay. Allison locked the classroom door and covered the windows with heavy blackout shades. She did this with the ease that comes from doing a lot of drills. Only thin beams of light from the doorframe lit up the dark room. Allison's thoughts were racing as she tried to figure out what was going on. It was never seen in school to have an active shooter drill. It had to be true, which meant that lives were really at risk inside these walls. It made her heart race to think that there were kids and teachers somewhere where she had nowhere to hide. In the corner, Billy heard a desk scrape and peeked out to ask, "What's going on?" Allison put her finger to her mouth to be quiet as the little boy's face lit up with shock. Allison looked out the small window slot while holding Sammy closer and hoping that all she saw were emergency vehicles coming to fix a false alarm. Instead, she saw two covered figures coming toward the locked classroom door with shaky, uneven steps. Someone held up an object that looked scary in the filtered light. A gun. Allison let out a gasp and pulled Sammy's head close to her chest to block his view. The invaders tried to break in by hitting the door hard and shaking it. A grave voice slurred, "Let us in." And then there was raspy, hysterical laughing. Little hearts were racing with fear as terrified whispers spread under the desks. Allison felt helpless because she couldn't help or comfort her students and couldn't even make a sound for fear of calling the monsters closer. One of the attackers smashed through the door with his weapon, making it lurch and break into pieces. Allison spun around quickly and quietly moved desks out of the way to hide the crawl space tunnel, just as heavy boots walked in. The hooded man yelled as he looked around the dark room. Allison put both hands over Sammy's mouth to block out his shaky sobs and curled up as close to his small body as she could. She had a lot of questions that she would never be able to answer. The most important question was how long she and her kids could stay in this nightmare, praying for help, but not seeing anyone, before violence found them in the dark. But there were no answers. They had to wait in agony as chaos and damage grew around them. As the thieves searched, their stomping feet rang menacingly through the crowded classroom as they pushed chairs out of the way. Allison desperately held on to Sammy, and she worked hard to slow down her racing breathing. The teacher had to be strong for her children, even though she was scared herself. A heavy boot hit where they were hiding, shaking the desks just inches away from Allison's head. As the man bent down to look into the dark, she curled up even tighter around Sammy and couldn't hold back a whimper. The man in the hood then turned around in shock when a shot went off somewhere down the hall. He yelled at his partner, "Fuck, we gotta go." Both of them walked out quickly, leaving the opening wide open. Allison carefully crawled out from under the desks on shaky legs after counting to 10. As she led the kids out one by one for a number, soft sobbing came from the other dark hiding places. She asked in a shaking voice, "Is everyone here?" A number of shaky nods confirmed that all 7 students were safe, even though many of them had cuts and bruises from the hasty crawl through broken furniture. Allison pushed back the rising flood and wiped her eyes with hands that were shaking. "Okay, please, be quiet and move quickly. Go with me in single file to the safe area behind the bookshelves." From far away, more shots could be heard, which made them move quickly but quietly. Allison squished herself into a small space in the corner and stared blankly at the doorway. She was ready to use her body to protect her kids from any new threats. They could hear screams and running feet from far away. She prayed that help would come soon. Just hold on a little longer. Heavy beating could be heard from the outside as police called for people inside. "The police? Is there anyone hurt inside?" Allison found her voice, even though it was shaking because she was letting go of stress. "Look at us. 7 kids and a teacher. Please move quickly." Officers rushed through with a lot of heavy gear and guns drawn. The suspects ran out the back. "Do you feel bad?" When cops saw the messy, bloody group huddled behind their teacher for safety, they helped quickly lead the kids outside to where the ambulances were waiting. When Allison saw the school again, it was a mess of flashing lights and chaos. Her legs gave out. Paramedics swarmed the scene and asked the same questions over and over while checking vital signs and putting shock blankets around the person. 2 deaths were confirmed down the hall. By some chance, no one in her class was hurt beyond minor cuts. Allison caught a glimpse of Sammy across the lot, safe and sound between his crying parents. When he looked at her, his eyes lit up with thanks, and she had to pull away before her feelings got too strong. Her mind kept going over everything, searching each tense moment for something she could have done differently to help save lives. But after the horror, there were no easy answers. All that could be done was pray that the darkness that had been haunting these school halls would finally go away. Allison and her kids had a hard time remembering the weeks after the lockdown. They were all required to go to counseling on a daily basis as they dealt with the trauma in their own unique ways. Sammy slowly came out of his shell. Telling Allison and close friends about what happened to him gave him strength. Volunteers from all over the area came together and fixed up the classroom's walls, making it a peaceful place to be again. By the time winter break came around, most of the cuts on the outside had healed, but there were still dark shadows behind the holiday cheer. Allison took time off until the new year and spent a lot of time talking to the families of victims and community leaders. Her desire to protect children grew stronger after she lost a loved one in an awful tragedy. It turned into a single-minded determination to change lax security policies through lobbying and advocacy. As soon as the new school year started, Allison gave each student a soothing smile and a light squeeze on the hand. Some clung to their parents unwillingly when they dropped them off, looking over their shoulders with fear, while others jumped right back into the structured routine. There would be bumps in the road on the way to progress, but emotions would rise and fall as long as they were talked about openly. In the middle of February, the anniversary of that terrible day came around. Allison kept things light and let the kids deal with things in any way they needed, whether it was through art, writing, or quiet thought. There were counselors around to help if they needed it. After school, there was a solemn memorial where families came together to dedicate a live memorial garden on the newly remodeled grounds. Even the shyest students were able to heal when they shared their stories with trusted listeners. Sammy now smiled at everyone, every day helping the younger kids get used to the friendly classroom community. Allison's spirits were lifted even when things were hard because of little wins like this. By the end of the school year in June, the wall of fear and trauma that had seemed impossible to break down was beginning to fall apart. Care, trust, and resiliency were being built up one brick at a time. Even though there were scars and risks outside the gates that could never be ignored, the kids inside felt safe and could grow up to be their full, happy selves again. Allison watched with a heavy heart as the last bell rang and students rushed into their parents' arms. She knew she had found her calling and would spend every day educating young people and protecting harmless people from harms they couldn't stop. Even though darkness can sometimes get in the way of progress, they could light the way to a better future when they work together.